Rain drummed against the windshield of the worn sedan as Emily sat in the parking lot, hands clenched around the steering wheel. Her eyes flickered to the emergency room doors, where her husband, Tom, emerged, wearing an expression of resignation that made her heart ache and her blood boil all at once. She was late. Again. He was supposed to handle the kids, but he couldn't even manage that, and now here they were, waiting for him to fix another mess. "Did they give you any answers?" she snapped, the words sharp and impatient. She could feel the weight of her exhaustion curling at the edges of her voice. Tom shrugged, stuffing his hands deep into the pockets of his fraying jacket. He was so out of place here, surrounded by bustling medical staff and anxious families, towering over his own failures like a ghost from another life. "Just a sprain," he muttered, his gaze dropping to the ground. "I'll pick up the kids after school." Emily's frustration surged. She didn't need his promises anymore, she needed him to be the man she once believed he could be. Instead, he stood before her, a shadow of the man she had married, the millionaire who had once commanded boardrooms and respect. Now, he was just a man with a past, lost in the present. Emily had built her life brick by brick, each layer representing a sacrifice she was more than willing to make for her children. She had always been the quiet strength in the family, balancing 2 jobs and a chaotic household since Tom had fallen from grace. She thrived on routine, waking before dawn to prepare breakfast for the kids, making lunches, and then layering on the armor of her professional persona as she set out for her job at a local marketing firm. In the evenings, she became a single mom and a make-believe superhero, stitching together school projects and bedtime stories before surrendering to the night, too exhausted to watch the world outside. The weight of her responsibilities shaped her into a self-sufficient woman, fiercely protective of her children. Emily adored their late-night talks, when they would sit on the living room floor scattered with crayons and construction paper, laughter mingling with the smell of burnt toast left in the kitchen. She often recalled the dreams she had once cultivated, of travel, of adventure, yet those dreams felt impossibly distant now, overshadowed by the reality of juggling bills and broken promises. The vibrant colors in her life had dulled, yet she wore the muted palette with pride, believing it was the price she had to pay for her children's happiness. But the emotional toll was undeniably heavy. There were days when she felt the walls closing in around her, stifling her spirit with a choking grip. The anger towards Tom was a constant companion, simmering beneath her controlled exterior. She hated the way he had let everything slip through his fingers, leaving her to pick up the pieces while he floated in a cloud of mediocrity. Her resentment came to a head in moments like this, when she could only see him for his failures, as if they were blazed in neon atop his brow. As she watched him approach, his shoulders slumped like a man bearing the weight of the world, her heart constricted with frustration. She didn't want to acknowledge that beneath that exterior lay remnants of the man she had once loved, someone ambitious, a dreamer who had built towers of success. All that was left was a disheveled figure drifting through life with no real purpose, and the chasm between them grew wider by the day. It was easy to vilify him in her mind, to tie his worth to the failures that piled up around them, but she knew in the silences of the night that her anger was also a reflection of her own fears. Tom's reality felt like a distant echo of himself, fading into something he barely recognized anymore. The once esteemed CEO who commanded boardrooms with a single glance found himself adrift in a landscape littered with shadowy memories of past glory. His disciplined life had been built on the tenets of hard work and relentless ambition, but an unseen hand had pulled him from his pedestal. It was in the quiet moments, standing in front of the mirror, that he saw the hollowness behind his own eyes, the distance from who he used to be. The sharp creases in his forehead told the story of sleepless nights filled with regret, each line a reminder of missed opportunities and squandered dreams. His past achievements loomed large, like a trophy shelf gathering dust, trophies that now felt like burdens. Each boardroom victory had come with a price. The unrelenting pressure had cost him his marriage, his family, and eventually his job. He had thought that success would fill the void inside him, but it had only highlighted the emptiness. Long gone were the days when he wore tailored suits, the respect of peers at his heels, and confidence like a second skin. Now, he struggled to dress in the mornings, the casual wear seeming to mock his inability to reclaim what had been lost. The longing for something more aided him daily, whispering that he was meant for greater pursuits. Each time he picked up the phone for a job inquiry, he felt the sting of rejection, a reminder of his diminished status. Standing before Emily, he felt fundamentally out of sync, painfully aware of how far they had fallen together. It was as if he were holding her back, a ghost of a past life haunting her ambitions. Yet, beneath the strife, there lingered a hope. He wanted her to see that he was still the man she once loved, that the sparks of his old self burned faintly, still flickering in the darkness. In the moments they shared, he fought against the urge to retreat into the shadows. Here he was, standing in the rain, trying to gather the pieces of their shared lives, hoping for a flicker of understanding to bridge the widening gap between them. Their worlds collided in that parking lot, two lives irreversibly altered by time and circumstance, yet still linked by the fragile thread of family. As he stood there under the neon lights, drenched and reflective, he hoped that somehow, they could find a way back to each other. But as he faced Emily's unyielding gaze, he knew it would take more than hope. It would take transformation, a willingness to confront the truth of who they had both become, and the shared burdens they carried. The rain picked up again, a relentless drumming as Emily pulled her phone from her pocket. A terse text from her boss flickered on the screen. "We need your report by noon. The client meeting is at 2 p.m. Anxiety knotted in her stomach as she glanced at Tom, who was still standing there with his hands shoved deep into his pockets. Time was slipping away, and the pressure felt unbearable. "Tom," she said, her voice steady but urgent. "I need you to take care of the kids today. I have to finish a report for work, and I can't do it with them underfoot." She watched as his shoulders tensed, a familiar glint of dismissal flashing in his eyes. "They're your kids too, you know. I can't be their babysitter, Emily." "I just got out of the hospital," he shot back, his voice low but edged with irritation. "Can't you call someone else? Maybe your mom?" Emily inhaled sharply, feeling the familiar anger bubbling up within her. "This isn't about me relying on anyone else. You're their father, Tom. I need you to step up, even just for a few hours." She knew she was pushing him, but the thought of her job hanging in the balance made her desperate. "Step up? I'm not even capable of taking care of myself right now," he shot back, bitterness curling his words as he stepped back, as if she had struck him. She saw the weariness etched across his face, and for a moment, her heart twisted with empathy, but it quickly transformed back into resolve. "Then maybe it's time you started," she replied, her tone calm and cool. "I can handle this, and you can handle a few hours with the kids." Emily could feel the tension shift in the air, as if the rain had become a curtain separating them from the rest of the world. She wasn't going to back down. Tom narrowed his eyes at her, the frustration swirling with something darker, an unacknowledged fear of her confidence, something he had once admired but now felt overshadowed by his own failures. "You don't get it, do you? I'm not a CEO anymore. I don't know how to handle everything like you do." "Exactly," she said, surprising herself with her own passion. "You were a leader once, Tom. You might find it inside you again. You don't have to be this man, you can change." It was a bold assertion, one that revealed her unflagging hope buried beneath layers of disappointment. She took a breath, thinking of her past as she spoke. "And I can help you. But you need to start by showing up, really showing up, for our kids." His expression softened, if only for a flicker. "And if I fail?" he asked quietly. "You'll be here to pick up the pieces again?" "I'm not going anywhere," she stated firmly, her heart thundering in her chest. "But you need to realize that you have a choice. It's time we start acting like a family again, together. I've juggled everything alone for long enough. I refuse to let this be our future." She was surprised by the strength of her own declaration, a testament to how far she had come from the woman who once felt invisible behind a thick veil of routine and obligation. His silence stretched between them, an uncertain kind of truce held together by the gravity of their shared past. As the tension floated in the air, Emily could feel him re-evaluating her, not as the tired, overwhelmed single mom he had come to see but as a woman layered with depth, strength, and an unquenchable spirit buried beneath the facade of a mundane life. It was a spark of something she had thought long lost, and in that moment, she saw a flicker of recognition in his eyes. "Fine," he muttered, his voice still edged with reluctance but tinged with something new, a hint of determination. "I'll take care of the kids." And just like that, the storm swirling around them began to shift as if they had taken the first steps toward recalibrating their lives, building back the connection they once had. As he turned to go, she noticed his posture was a little less hunched, his stride a bit more purposeful. Maybe, just maybe, beneath layers of disappointment and resentment, there lay a path forward that could lead them back to themselves and each other. The following day began with a chaotic flurry, the kind that always seemed to weigh heavy on Emily's shoulders. She had just finished preparing breakfast when she heard the unmistakable sound of her kids squabbling in the other room. With the report deadline looming at work, the anxiety clenching in her stomach felt insurmountable. She needed a plan, a way to carry the load without collapsing under its weight. "Can you keep an eye on the kids for a bit?" she called to Tom, who was sitting at the kitchen table, still in yesterday's clothes. He looked disheveled, his hair sticking up in tufts as he stared at the same spot on the table, clearly wrestling with his own sense of purpose. He paused, glancing at her before nodding, almost hesitantly, as if he were testing the waters of a role he hadn't held in ages. As Emily poured the last drops of coffee into her mug, she could feel Tom's gaze linger on her, searching for an opportunity to bridge the chasm that had grown between them. "I can set them up with their school projects," he said tentatively, breaking the silence. "Maybe I can help with that science thing they mentioned last week." A flicker of surprise crossed Emily's face. She had never considered Tom's past knowledge as a valuable resource for their children. It puzzled her that he would even think to contribute in this way. "The science project?" "Great idea," she replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "It's due Friday. Just make sure you supervise them closely." As she rushed to her room to prepare for the day, she couldn't shake off the feeling that something was shifting. She could almost feel an unspoken shift in their dynamic, a tentative thread being spun anew. Tom called for the kids, a low but steady voice cutting through the household chaos, and soon laughter echoed from the living room, something Emily hadn't heard in a long time. By the time Emily returned, she found Tom surrounded by crumpled paper and colored pencils, the kids perched on the floor beside him, visibly excited. "So, we can use baking soda and vinegar for the volcano," he exclaimed, animatedly sketching his ideas on a sheet of paper. As she watched him interact with her children, a sense of recognition began to unfold within her, a glimpse of that ambitious man she had once fallen in love with, alive and engaged. "Dad, can we make it explode?" one of her children chirped, gleefully clapping her hands. Emily felt her heart soften at the sight. There was an energy in the room that felt infectious, a subtle magic as Tom began to rise to the occasion, finally stepping into a role that she had long coveted for him. "Of course, it's science. But we have to be careful with the measurements. Remember, the bigger the reaction, the more careful we have to be," he said, leaning in closer to explain, his brows furrowed with concentration. Emily took a step back from the whirlwind of creativity, realizing that for the first time in months, she was not solely responsible for every detail, every decision. As she sat down at the kitchen counter, laptop open, she caught glimpses of their collaboration, Tom guiding the kids through the scientific method, their laughter punctuating the sense of ease that had descended over their home. She could hear him gently correcting them when they veered off course, reassured by his demeanor. A sense of pride began to blossom within her. She could almost visualize the changes happening in real time. With a deep breath, Emily spoke up, re-engaging with the moment, her voice steady. "Maybe I could help with the paperwork for the project later, or we could come up with a presentation together? I could share the tricks I've learned from work." It was an olive branch, a gentle push toward a more unified family effort. Tom's eyes met hers, a flicker of understanding passing between them, hinting at a newfound respect. "Sure," he replied, a genuine smile breaking through the clouds that had long overshadowed his features. "That could work. I could use your expertise, actually. I've forgotten half the rules about school projects." They exchanged a soft laugh, and in that moment, she felt the weight between them lessen, as if they were both beginning to approach a terrain that had felt inhospitable for far too long. The day unfolded into a rhythm she hadn't anticipated. As they worked through the details of the project together, the tension that had once defined their exchanges began to dissolve, replaced by moments of trust and shared laughter. They traded stories about their own childhood science fair experiences, revealing bits of themselves that had long been dormant, vulnerable threads woven into a larger tapestry of shared history. Something unspoken began to mend, breathing life into their relationship in a way that seemed both unexpected and profoundly promising. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows across the living room where Emily and Tom sat amidst a scattering of colored paper and science supplies. The laughter of their kids echoed through the house, creating a backdrop to the tension that lingered just beneath the surface like an unresolved chord. As the volcano project took shape, Emily found herself reflecting on what had led her to this moment, shadows of her past melding with the reality of her present. Born into a family that celebrated ambition and achievement, Emily had always viewed life through a lens of possibility. Her parents were relentless dreamers, her mother a spirited artist and her father a community organizer whose zeal for social justice ignited fires in the hearts of his peers. They instilled in her a sense of power, teaching her that hard work could transform lives. Yet in their pursuit of greatness, they often overlooked the quieter ambitions of their daughter, inadvertently setting her on a path to self-reliance and determination. After high school, Emily had pursued a degree in marketing, earning scholarships that propelled her through college. She graduated with honors, her sights set on a career that would challenge and inspire her. Determined to make a name for herself, she dedicated long hours to internships and networking, delighting in the feeling of achievement as she landed a position at a reputable firm after graduation. But with ambition came the harsh realities of an unforgiving corporate ladder. The further she climbed, the more the hours bled into her personal life, a sacrifice she willingly made, believing she could have it all. Then came the day she met Tom, a man who radiated confidence, brilliance, and charisma in the boardroom. He became her partner in both business and life, lifting her up, encouraging her dreams with the same fervor she'd learned in childhood. They shared late-night discussions about future plans, ambitions that danced like fireflies against the backdrop of their blossoming relationship. But as their love story unfolded, she was unaware that the trajectory of his life was about to pivot drastically. Tom's ascent in the corporate world had been meteoric, his keen insights making him a star among industry giants. Yet, as Emily pursued her career, his success grew increasingly hollow. The pressure to maintain his status as a CEO took its toll, pulling them apart despite their shared dreams. It was during this tumultuous period that everything unraveled, success morphed into a burden, and when Tom fell from grace, it was as though the world Emily had built around them crumbled under the weight of unfulfilled expectations. The moment they had children, everything changed. Emily had cherished the thought of raising a family, yet found herself shouldering the weight of parenting and finances alone as Tom retreated into himself, worn down by guilt and shame. She had to stifle her own aspirations, nurturing two small lives while navigating the treacherous waters of their family dynamic. Slowly, without her realizing it, she began to feel like a ghost in her own life, brilliant ambitions tucked away, replaced by the daily grind of survival. As time wore on, resentment seated itself in her heart, a bitterness directed at Tom, the man who had once been her partner in dreams. He seemed to float through life, trapped in a cycle of mediocrity, failing to grasp that he had deflated her hopes too. She hated him for his inability to rise, for the way he had let their life together slip into chaos, and the tight knot of frustration within her threatened to suffocate the remnants of patience she fought to uphold. The joy she once derived from being a mother began to lose its luster as she found herself caught in a loop of responsibility and disappointment. Yet, somehow, beneath the layers of anger resided a flicker of yearning, a longing for the man he used to be. In the quiet moments, when she could no longer suppress her hopes, she would catch herself reflecting on their early relationship, recalling the laughter and fireside dreams. Memories of late-night talks and shared aspirations washed over her in waves, and for a fraction of a moment, she felt connected to the man who had inspired her. The tragedy was that Tom seemed to have lost all that he had once been, collapsing under the weight of his own story, too wrapped in his own failures to reach for the light. As she watched him engage with their children that afternoon, a flicker of that old spark returned to her heart. There was something in the way he tentatively laughed, allowing himself to be vulnerable, that shifted the atmosphere between them. For the first time in years, Emily felt a sliver of hope. Perhaps he could become the man she had always believed he could be, one who would stand alongside her to face the chaos of parenthood and life as partners once more. As she looked at Tom, she began to wonder if the remnants of his past could guide him toward new possibilities, urging her to believe in a shared future they might still create. As the laughter from the living room swelled around them, the tension began to lift, slowly replaced by a burgeoning sense of camaraderie. The walls that had divided them were beginning to soften, and Emily felt the weight of her frustration start to lighten. In that moment, she realized that while their lives had taken twists she hadn't anticipated, there was still room for renewal between them. Together, she whispered to herself as she glanced at Tom, determination wrapping around her heart like a promise. If they could navigate the ghosts of their pasts and the shadows that had dogged them for so long, perhaps they could forge a future that sparked with the resilience and brilliance they both once had. In that quiet moment amidst the chaos, Emily felt the first blossoms of an unexpected trust unfold, the first step on a long road toward rediscovering not just each other, but the individuals they had once been. The following week unfurled with unexpected rhythm, a tentative truce woven between Emily and Tom as they navigated their lives with a newfound commitment to co-parenting. The laughter of their children echoed through the house, brightening their home with a feeling they had long buried under disputes and disappointment. Yet, beneath this fragile surface rested an undercurrent of tension, the kind that clung to the edges of conversations, whispering reminders of the past that still haunted them both. One evening, as Emily settled into her home office, preparing reports for yet another impending deadline, a frantic knock erupted at the front door. Her heart raced as she opened it to reveal their neighbor, Melody, her face pale and distressed. "Emily! It's the school. The principal called. There's been a fight at the playground," she exclaimed, her voice laced with urgency. "They need parents to help defuse the situation." The news hit Emily like a jolt of electricity. She turned to see Tom entering the hallway, confusion etched across his features. "What's going on?" he asked, eyes darting between Emily and Melody. "There's a scuffle at school," she replied, a sudden sense of dread hanging in the air. "They need parents to step in. I have to go." "Wait, Emily," Tom interjected, striding forward with determination. "I'll come with you." The declaration surprised her, a crack in the old narrative of their lives that she hadn't anticipated. You want to help?" she asked, disbelief coloring her tone. "Yes. I need to show the kids that fighting isn't the answer." "I didn't do enough of that before," he replied, determination glinting in his eyes. Emily nearly choked on her skepticism, feeling both gratitude and caution warring inside her. She hadn't expected this renewed sense of responsibility from him, let alone the willingness to tackle conflict directly. As they arrived at the school, chaos greeted them. Children were clustered around the swings, some crying, others shouting. Emily felt the weight of the moment, and with Tom at her side, they stepped into the fray. "Hey, everyone," she called, trying to capture their attention amid the tumult. "Let's talk about what happened." Tom moved closer to the children, a figure of calm against the storm of emotions swirling around them. "Fighting hurts. It doesn't solve anything," he spoke gently, addressing the crowd of young faces. A few kids stopped, confused or uncertain, but Emily saw the way they began to lean into his words. There was a power in his quiet strength, a fatherly aura she hadn't expected. As they worked together, addressing their children's bruised feelings and misunderstandings, with Tom sharing stories of times he had faced challenges in the corporate world and how the right words resolved conflicts, Emily felt a sense of transformation taking shape. Here was the man she had yearned to see for so long, stripped of his past failures and confronting the present with purpose. Once the situation calmed down and each child was reassured, she took a step back to observe Tom. There was an ease to his demeanor, a sense of connection that she hadn't imagined he was capable of. The way he guided them, invoking empathy and wisdom, created a ripple effect she found herself drawn to. Perhaps this new chapter required them to lean into their strengths rather than relive past failures. That evening, as they returned home worn but triumphant, Emily felt an unfamiliar sensation swirling within her, a glimmer of hope. "I didn't know you had it in you," she remarked, a tentative smile breaking through her exhaustion. Tom met her gaze, golden light spilling through the window behind him. "Neither did I," he admitted, a spark of realization igniting between them. They stood at the cusp of something new, ready to redefine what being a family meant, shedding the ghosts of who they had been as they began to forge a future together. The sun dipped low behind the trees, casting a warm glow through the living room window where Emily and Tom sat surrounded by scattered school supplies and remnants of the scuffle at school. The sound of their children's laughter echoed from the backyard, a playful reminder of the chaotic yet beautiful life they had built. Emily watched as their youngest daughter, Lily, chased after a butterfly, her laughter ringing out like music, pure and untainted by the weight of adult worries. As she twirled in the grass, arms outstretched, she seemed to embody the freedom Emily longed for, the freedom to be carefree, to dream without the shadows of failure looming overhead. Tom, still seated at the table, absent-mindedly fiddled with a crumpled piece of paper. He watched the scene unfold, an unexpected smile creeping onto his lips, a glimmer of recognition stirring within him as he saw the joy in their daughter's innocent pursuit. It was a sight he had almost forgotten, the simple beauty of a family in harmony. "Dad! Look!" Lily exclaimed, her voice ringing clear as she pointed at the butterfly dancing in the fading light. Tom's heart swelled at her enthusiasm, and instinctively, he rose from the table and stepped toward the door, drawn into the moment. "Can you catch it?" he asked, kneeling beside her, his eyes sparkling with a curiosity he hadn't felt in years. "Maybe," she giggled, her small hands fluttering in the air, a race of determination on her face. In that fleeting moment, something shifted within Tom. The chasm of resentment and failure seemed to narrow as he leaned into his daughter's joy, a simple act of connection that felt heavy with promise. Emily watched them from the doorway, a quiet sense of peace washing over her. She no longer saw the man who had faltered but rather the father who was beginning to rise. Their eyes met across the room, a glance filled with unspoken understanding and shared hope. There was no longer a need for words, only the warmth of possibility. And as the butterfly fluttered away, Tom felt the first whisper of change settle in his heart, a delicate reminder that their journey together was far from over. He turned back to the laughter of his children, ready to embrace the new day ahead.